Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We break down the latest in political news, and today we've got a lot to dive into, from debates to polling shifts and some fiery exchanges. There's a ton to unpack, so let's get into it. Let's start with Donald Trump's recent hour-long news conference, which was held at his estate in Palm Beach, Florida. This wasn't just another press event. It was a full-on spectacle where Trump recommitted to participating in the upcoming presidential debate on September 10th against Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, this debate is shaping up to be one of the most highly anticipated events in what is already an extraordinary election season. It's the kind of political face-off that could set the tone for the rest of the campaign. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. During the press conference, Trump didn't just confirm his participation. He also took the opportunity to taunt Harris and predictably repeat some of the old debunked claims. He even revisited his usual grievances and lashed out at reporters who dared to question him about the enthusiasm Harris's campaign is generating. It was classic Trump, full of bravado, attacks, and a few misleading statements thrown in for good measure. Now, let's talk about this debate for a second. ABC News has confirmed that both Trump and Harris have agreed to the September 10th debate, and this sets up a political showdown that the entire nation will be watching. But that's not all. Trump mentioned that he proposed 3 debates in total for September, each hosted by a different television network. This move shows that Trump is ready to engage, but also that he's strategically setting the stage for what he likely views as a pivotal moment in the election. He's made it clear that he thinks these debates are crucial, stating, "I think it's very important to have debates. I look forward to the debates because I think we have to set the record straight." The Harris campaign, on the other hand, has remained tight-lipped, offering no immediate comment. But you can bet they're gearing up for what promises to be an intense political battle. Trump didn't stop there. He also took the opportunity to once again go after some of his Republican rivals, particularly Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. For those who might not remember, Kemp has been a frequent target of Trump's wrath ever since he refused to support Trump's unfounded claims of election fraud in Georgia. Trump's criticism of Kemp has been relentless, and this press conference was no different. Trump's comments here weren't just aimed at Kemp. They were a reminder to his base that he's still holding a grudge against those within his own party who didn't back his election fraud narrative. But one of the more intriguing aspects of this press conference was Trump's attempt to draw a contrast between himself and Kamala Harris. Trump pointed out that Harris hasn't held a news conference since becoming the likely Democratic nominee after Joe Biden withdrew from the race. He's clearly trying to paint himself as the more transparent and accessible candidate, even if his approach to interacting with the press is often combative and dismissive. It's a classic Trump strategy: set himself up as the fighter, the one who's willing to take on the tough questions, even if he doesn't always give straight answers. Now, Trump was visibly annoyed when reporters questioned him about the growing enthusiasm for Harris's campaign and her ability to draw large crowds. He dismissed a question about his own lighter campaign schedule as stupid, which isn't surprising given Trump's history of lashing out at anyone who challenges him. It's clear that the momentum Harris is building is getting under Trump's skin, and that's something to watch as we get closer to the election. Moving on to another major issue, abortion. Trump suggested that abortion might not be a major factor in this election, despite it being a significant topic since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, returning control over abortion laws to individual states. Trump downplayed the issue, saying it has become much less of an issue. But the reality is that abortion remains a deeply polarizing topic, and one that could influence voter turnout, particularly among women and younger voters. Trump even mentioned states like Ohio and Kansas, which have voted to protect abortion rights, as examples of how the issue is playing out differently across the country. Interestingly, Trump hinted that Florida might vote in a more liberal way than people expect when it comes to abortion laws, suggesting that the state could potentially repeal its abortion ban later this year. However, when pressed on how he would vote if that happens, Trump dodged the question entirely. This reluctance to take a clear stance on such a critical issue shows just how delicate the topic of abortion is within the Republican Party. Trump knows that taking a hardline stance could alienate moderate voters, but being too vague could also cost him support among his conservative base. Now, let's talk about some of the more controversial claims Trump made during this press conference. Once again, Trump falsely claimed that nobody was killed on January 6th, the day of the Capitol riot. This is simply not true. Ashley Babbitt, a 35-year-old Air Force veteran and a Trump supporter, was shot and killed by a Capitol police officer as she tried to climb through a broken part of a door leading into the speaker's lobby, a restricted area of the Capitol. Trump has often referenced Babbitt's death as a way to portray the rioters as victims, while downplaying the violence and chaos that took place that day. But that's not all. Trump also claimed that his rally on January 6th, just before the Capitol riot, drew a larger crowd than the historic March on Washington in 1963, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. This is a bold claim and one that's not supported by any evidence. It's part of a pattern we've seen from Trump exaggerating the size of his crowds and events as a way to boost his image and downplay the significance of other historical moments. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Despite all of Trump's bluster and bravado, Kamala Harris has actually overtaken him in the betting markets. That's right. On platforms like Polymarket and PredictIt, Harris is now the favorite to win the presidential election. Just 2 weeks ago, Trump had a significant lead in these betting markets with a 60-far chance of winning compared to Harris's 29. But those numbers have flipped dramatically. Polymarket now gives Harris a 49 chance of winning, while Trump's chances have dropped to 40. Meanwhile, PredictIt gives Harris an even stronger lead with a 57 chance of winning compared to Trump's 45. This shift in the betting markets coincides with Harris's selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz is seen as a solid pick, and it appears that his addition to the ticket has given Harris a boost in both the polls and the betting markets. According to the Tracker election betting odds, which aggregates data from several different betting markets, Harris now has a 50.9 chance of winning the election compared to Trump's 47.1. Just 2 weeks ago, Trump had more than 30-point lead over Harris in these same markets. So this is a massive swing in Harris's favor. And it's not just the betting markets that are showing Harris gaining ground. Recent polls are also reflecting this shift. And MPAPS Newsmare survey gives Harris a 3-point national lead over Trump, while a Morning Consult poll shows her with a 4-point lead. It's clear that Harris's campaign is gaining momentum and Trump is starting to feel the pressure. So what's Trump's reaction to all of this? Well, it seems that Harris has really gotten under his skin. Reports suggest that Trump is privately fuming over the momentum Harris has gained, and it's showing in his public behavior. Trump's niece, Mary Trump, who is a trained mental health professional, recently wrote an essay on her site, The Good in Us, where she discussed her uncle's apparent state of mind. She described him as terrified of Kamala Harris, pointing out that Trump hates being laughed at and is particularly threatened by strong women and minorities. Mary Trump even mentioned that her uncle has started calling Harris crazy and giving her the nickname Laughing Kamala, because, as she puts it, Joey is something Donald Trump has never experienced and doesn't understand. This fear and frustration seem to be driving Trump's increasingly erratic public statements and behavior. Trump is known for his aggressive rhetoric, but lately it's taken on an even darker tone. His fundraising emails and other communications have started using apocalyptic language, suggesting that his supporters need to unleash hell against their enemies. This kind of language is dangerous as it can incite violence and further polarize an already divided nation. Trump's strategy here appears to be twofold. On the one hand, he's trying to rally his base by framing the election as an existential battle between good and evil with himself, as the only one who can save his supporters from the forces of darkness. On the other hand, he's also trying to paint Kamala Harris and the Democrats as the true villains, claiming that they are the ones who will unleash hell on his supporters if they win. It's a classic tactic of fear-mongering, and it's designed to keep his base loyal and energized, even as the election dynamics shift against him. So where does this leave us? Well, we're heading into a critical phase of the election with the debates coming up and the momentum shifting in Kamala Harris's favor. Trump is going to be under intense pressure to turn things around. But as we've seen, his response so far has been to double down on the kind of rhetoric that appeals to his base while alienating more moderate voters. Whether the strategy will work remains to be seen. But one thing is clear, this election is far from over, and the next few weeks are going to be crucial in determining who comes out on top. That's it for today's deep dive into the latest political developments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. so you don't miss any updates as we continue to follow this unpredictable and high-stakes election. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.